Welcome to the final podcast for season 5, episode 512, Never My Love. This is Matt Roberts, executive producer and writer. You've probably already noticed that the recap we did in a slightly different way for this episode. Each shot in the recap was from only a scene that Claire was in, and we stylized it to give you to draw you in right away, to make you to tell you this isn't going to be a standard episode. You can see we came right into what we called when we started working on this a long time ago. This episode, I kind of imagined at the very beginning of the breaking. Tony and I, when we first started talking about it, had ideas of this dissociation of Claire when she's going through trauma. We wanted to find a safe place for her to go, and we came up with this idea of an imagination, her imagining her family cloaked around her. So really, even before all the episodes were written, we were talking about this particular episode, because a lot of times when we're breaking the seasons, we'll pick a place to, where are we going to end, because you always want to know where you're going, and then you can start filling in the episodes to get you there, to tell that whole story. So from the very beginning of the breaking of season 5, we knew we were going to end up here. How we were going to show this, what we did in the script is Tony and I wrote really big. We wrote all these elements, and we actually kind of wrote them out as little vignettes, knowing that not all of it was going to make it to screen. It just couldn't. So there was a lot more dialogue. There was a lot more things involved, in the actual sequences. But once we got it into script, and once we got it into prep, conversations with Jamie Payne, who directed this episode, we talked extensively about how we were going to show these, and of course they weren't going to be the full vignette. Once we edited them out, and they would just be snippets of, once we saw what we were calling the reality footage, which is the moments where what we would call present day, the storyline. So we were normal episode. When I say normal, I mean just episode 9. It wasn't normal what's going on in it, but I mean production wise, it's normal. There's standard things going on. There's VFX. There's things like that. So we have those meetings. So for each individual episode, I would say during prep, we could probably have between 100 and 150 different meetings with the writer and the producer and the director, and just talking about what goes into each scene. And you would go to an art department meeting, and you'd meet with the production designer and their team, and then you go to costume and you meet with their team, and props, and you just keep going and going, visual effects, special effects, stunts. And each time you have you have a meeting, and then they work on what we talk about, and then you go have another meeting. So over the course of the season, you can have thousands of meetings. This particular episode probably had double the amounts of meetings that I've ever been involved with, and I've been involved from day one, about 8 years ago. So we broke down each scene in the vignettes. Tony and Jamie and I actually met off what we would call off campus. We met at a meeting room in a hotel on the weekends, and we just talked and talked and talked about what we wanted to be in these vignettes. Funny thing about this scene right here is, there's a river going by, and when we saw the footage, and it's just nothing against production or anything, but you can go to a river in Scotland sometimes, and it could be flowing very quickly, and then on shooting day it could be running a lot more placidly. And I think we found that Claire's plan was to get across that river, and it was just moving so placidly that it didn't feel like it was a good plan. So to help the scene out, what we did is special or visual effects, added rapids right behind her. So that's a visual effect that we did, and I think the whole visual effects team did such an amazing job on this particular footage. Every time I see it, you just can't tell, and that's the best compliment to a visual effects artist. Is I didn't see any visual effects there, and you really don't. I feel like this podcast, because the pace of the early part of the episode moves so fast, I can't hardly get into some of the Easter eggs in the what we called dreamscapes. We didn't have a really good name for what Claire was. What would we call them? So we called these dreamscapes. She was getting out of getting out of the abuse, dissociating into these moments to protect herself. And we found in editing, we spent a lot of time in editing on this particular episode, probably double any other episode for the season, just to make sure it was what we felt was right and authentic, and moving back and forth at the right pace. So we put a lot of care into this episode. Not that we don't put care into all the other episodes. I just think with the particular subject matter that we had to go above and beyond, and everybody across the board did. The production team, everybody on the ground, the whole entire cast, Katrina and Sam and Richard and Sophie and everybody involved. They really just dug in and knew how important this particular episode was, and we wanted to do our best. And a lot of times people say do it right, and for me, doing it right is if we put our best genuine effort in to tell this story as honestly as we can, and to take what the books gave us and to portray that onto screen the best we can, then that to me is doing it right and doing it justice. And because traumas are individual things, and someone who has gone through this can they're the only ones that can speak to it, and this might not be right to them, and it might be right to others. So for me, as long as we, in talking about this with everybody, from the studio network and production and everybody, from PR, we just put our best effort in and to do our best job. And I am truly proud of this episode. And I think it, across the board, shines, and it may make you feel uncomfortable. And sometimes drama does that. It's Outlander isn't always shiny, happy moments, although we have our share of those. I think sometimes, you absolutely need those moments, the shiny, happy moments, because it makes drama. You need the balance between good and bad, and light and dark, and without it, there's no contrast. It's just all gray. In some of the when I sat down and talked to Gary even before we had a script written for this particular episode. And I talked to Gary and Trisha, Gary Steele, who does production design, and Trisha Bigger, who does the costume. I wanted them to bring their own ideas, but I also told them exactly what I wanted in the concept. And they jumped on it. They were all over it. And I said to Gary that I wanted this house to be dynamic. I didn't want it to be static, meaning every scene, every vignette, I wanted him to change things. So I didn't want there. I didn't want it to feel like a linear story. I wanted Claire to be able to go in and out, and she's not remember, or it's not the same image every time. So where something can be on one of the bureaus in one scene, it's not in another scene. It's not that the continuity's off. It's that was a deliberate choice. One of the big things in this modern house is what we called it. Certainly the paintings. One painting is it's an abstract of Fraser's Ridge Big House. I asked Gary to paint one, or to have it painted, and we did a couple concepts, and we came to on this one, and I believe it's now in my office in Scotland. It was important to bring in elements of her both worlds, So that image of the big house is what she's thinking, but it's not fully realized. So I wanted it to be an abstract. And then if you notice, Claire's medical kit is on the counter in one shot. And you'll see the leaky roof is the world outside was leaking in, and you can see the two empty chairs where Brianna and Roger, and I'm sure there's another chair for Jemmy, in the sense that they're not there. And obviously in the first shot you saw the orange very prominent, and that was a conversation that Jamie and Tony and I were having at one of those off-campus meetings, and I asked if was it crazy to bring in the orange, and they both jumped on it, and Tony, I think, spent an hour with props picking out the perfect orange, and so she really dug into that. This modern house, we locations went and found this for us in Scotland, and if for those people who were really paying attention, would have seen a picture of the front of this house. We took a picture of it and we put it on a magazine cover, and we put that in episode 5 for the title card. When Claire is putting back a magazine and picking up The Impetuous Pirate, the magazine has this modern house's picture on it, and it says Modern House in North Carolina. I can't remember the exact caption, but we did that to plant in her head where she could have imagined this house. So it's just not a random house. So to tie it up a little tighter, you can see that this is Lionel Brown and Hodgepile there, as the cops delivering this bad news of an accident, and once again another I don't know if it was an Easter egg, but it's definitely an egg. Claire describes going through the stones way back in season 1 as a car crash, as it feels like a car crash. So the projection is her children are going through, and her grandchild are going through the stones, and it might be a car crash, and her not knowing what happened to them is what we're saying, that she doesn't know. And I think for this, we had a lot of ideas about this, but and when I say this, I mean Roger and Bree not going anywhere. And one of the reasons why, and I think book readers know what's coming up in season 6, the reason why we did it has implications for season 6, and that's as far as I'm going to tell. That's a big tease, I think, but you will be paid. It'll be paid off in season 6. We reset the timeline here. We wanted to tell a little bit of this story to get them back. We knew we wanted Roger there when they went to rescue Claire. We knew we wanted Bree home when Claire came home. So it was important not to. And then there's a lot of story for season 6 that we are not leaving on the table. And I think it's. I see some of the speculation. Outlander fans tend to speculate sometimes about things not being told and us leaving things by the wayside. And I can't assure you that every scene that you've ever loved in the books is going to be in the next season or in any season. But I can assure you we're not just blatantly leaving certain things out because they have, there's big stories in 6. And just because we're not starting them in a certain spot doesn't mean we're not doing them. Is the long way around that one. I love this shot. It just really draws you in there, and you could see that Jamie put on his kilt. We had saved, and we talked about this over the course of the season, when we want to see Jamie in his kilt. It's such an iconic look for him that it it needed to be dramatic. And I think in the opening, when he puts his kilt on, in episode 1, it was dramatic. We wanted to save it for when he goes to get Claire back, and you see him in his whole, his Highlander garb, where he's going, and this is what he fights in. So, we deliberately tried to bring in a lot of callbacks from both, throughout the season, but from other seasons as well. And we spent a lot of time, Tony and I, going through the scenes to find those moments, not only in the dreamscapes, but throughout the episode as well. Never My Love, believe it or not, wasn't our first choice. It was scripted as another song, which which was just as poignant and I think good. But in a weird quirk, we couldn't get clearance. We couldn't use it. And we found this particular song. What we did is we went and we had people make up lists, and I believe Tony had it on her list, and I believe my assistant Maddie had it on her list, and we played it, and it was perfect. And it actually is for us and the story. It worked out. It worked out, in a better, actually. And now I couldn't even remember the other song, and I'm never going to tell it to you. So one of the things we wanted to do is stay in Claire's perspective and not give away where the guys were. And I think that's where. And I mean, I know in the book there were the drum elements, and we just couldn't figure a way of getting them in without giving it away, and then giving away to the audience that they're coming to save them, and that the way Jamie filmed the look of the attack. We talked about it, but it just In the final cut, it just didn't seem to work. So this was a big deal. The the once again the cloaking and the wrapping of the plaid, and we really thought these elements would show where Claire's head was, where what she's thinking of, how she's protecting herself from all this trauma. We spoke a lot to Katrina. We did makeup tests. We did quite a bit of makeup tests to see the stages that Claire would go through during this episode, and you know, it the hair and makeup team, you know, did a great job across the board with this episode, and well, with every episode, but the ambush was actually, there's much more footage of the ambush. All the cast did put in a lot of work, both practicing and rehearsing. It felt like, once again, you're always looking for the appropriate amount. We actually trimmed it down a little bit in post to get to this moment. It's the moments between the characters, I think, was much more important than the actual killing of the guys. These little looks and touches, and I think that we felt like it was more important to spend here than the fighting. There are quite a few lines in this particular episode that we knew we had to get, and I talked to the director about them, and you almost place a star next to him, and you go, this is a very important line. It needs to be covered. You need to get it. There can be, don't mess it up, is the directive to the director as they go out. And Tony Graffia, who wrote this episode with me, was covering this episode. I was during the shooting, and I was there during the whole shoot, and we just talk about these things so much, and you almost you worry so much about how's it going to come out. But this particular episode, across the board, I think everybody brought their, what we would say, A game, and we just all knew how important it was. So everybody, production, visual effects, special effects, props, set deck. I mean, the set decoration on that modern house is above and beyond, and just the little elements throughout the house, and adding little touches here and there, and costume, the way they just those scenes just really jump off the screen. I think Bear, takes these scenes to a new place with the music too. When we watch these, we can watch these dry, which means no music, and sometimes you'll watch a scene and you'll say, no, it's better dry. You don't want anything to get in the way of the performance. And then these moments, Bear just puts in this subtle touch of music that really heightens the moments, the emotion. Sorry, I was watching. That happens. No whiskey today. Sorry, I'm having iced tea. It's just, I wanted to be clear headed while I talked about this episode. We, in talking about, after, how much, where, when we were breaking this episode, Tony and I were writing, it was, well, how much after should we go? How far should we go after the rape, and after Jamie and the guys come and rescue her, and we felt like we needed to give a good amount of time to that, and so if you notice, it comes about midway in the episode of Jamie's here, and he's found her, and they're on their way back to Fraser's Ridge, and I think some of the most poignant scenes that we've ever done on Outlander are coming up. I'm at the place where Jamie and Claire are at the waterfall. There's a waterfall behind them, and we had to step away from the waterfall because this is such an intimate, quiet scene that although the waterfall is beautiful, if they didn't step away, you wouldn't be able to hear a word they were saying. So Jamie reblocked the scene and put them away. Thankfully, put them away from the water because this is a scene. It didn't suit them talking loud. It's such a quiet moment. Look, I can get into these episodes just like you guys, so I end up watching the scene a little bit. This is getting Claire back to the ridge. I think one of the it's a huge moment where Bree you know meets her sees her mother and meets her, and having gone through a trauma like this, it's just once again all these poignant moments, and they're going to keep coming and coming throughout this the back half of this episode. It's just so touching, and I love that she's wrapped in the plaid, and I mean, love is a it's just all the visuals are important, and I think like I said, we took a lot of care in making sure that they got them right. And now that she doesn't need the dreamscapes, she can actually use her family, to give her strength, and to help her heal. This is a scene we talked about being very silent and dry. So we'll there's no music. We wanted the scrubbing sound and the water sound and the fire sound, all those, the sounds that you of life, that are right there, and if we felt it was very important to you know leave Claire a little isolated there, and then of course the callback to season 4. Tony and I talked about this particular moment, and we felt even after seeing the episode, the way Sophie played the moment, in way back way back season 4, feels way back because we shot it so long ago. That that when Lizzie said those words, that it comforted her in some way, and so it felt like that's what she would say to her mother, is the same thing that made her feel a little better, that she might say that to her mother. I don't know if you noticed, but there's Claire in a mirror being shot, so the camera's behind her back, and it's a very clever way of getting a getting this shot is you know, really, you see the cameras here, but then they shoot in the mirror to get her reflection. So that's the reflection. It's a very clever shot. The context that we had to use for Katrina to get her eyes all bloodshot, and I know we did tests on those, and so again we look for those moments, the book moments where we can play them. This is I often talk in the podcast about allowing more time for shooting, and this episode was one of those episodes where we knew it was going to take more time on set than than the average episode, because of the subject matter, because of the performance, that we were going to have to let them breathe. Meaning the director's going to have to let the actors get to a place that they are perform, that they can dig these performances out. So you might allow a day for a big stunt that's going on, but you also have to allow a full day for intimate scenes that have powerful performances. And it doesn't, you look at the page and you go, oh, it's two people talking, let's do that in a few hours. And when I sit down in the scheduling meetings and I say, no, we need to give this, what we call a two-hander, so there's two people in the scene, you need to give this two-hander 5 hours. And we have such a great team of assistant directors. We call those ADs, and they've been with us a long time, and they know the show in and out. So a lot of times these scheduling meetings go pretty quickly because, one of our ADs, Patrick Conroy, who's been with us a long time, he would know, I'm going to give this 5 hours, because he knows what Outlander's about. And we have a lot of conversations with all the ADs who come in about this. So and once again, we have extensive meetings about this, and what scenes we think will need extra time. And of course, that one did. The one we just saw with Claire, the bathtub. Not only just because of hair and makeup, and someone being wet always takes, when they're we're bathing or in a river or whatever, all those things take extra time. So or when it actually rains, but it's not supposed to be raining in the scene, so once again, drying everybody off. we went back and forth with that particular moment about just blowing out the candle and not having him say anything. And then I think ultimately we all agreed that if he said, he killed a man. And in a weird way, you know, it's an unburdening for Roger. I think it's helps his arc all the way through is that he's come to a place where he had to actually take a man's life, not not like the little girl in episode 11 where she was going to die and that was mercy. This was a deliberate act of someone who was living and breathing and presumably healthy, and he did it, you know, to save his family. And that was the arc of the season: is what lengths would you go to save your family? How far would you go? What would you do? What wouldn't you do? And I think across the board, we have shown that the Frasers and the Mackenzies are the most important thing to them is their family. We obviously, this is a callback to season 2 when Claire was with the King of France, and the King of France forced her to choose between Jamie's life or giving herself to the king. And we had quite a few conversations about this. And when someone's forcing you that way to give yourself to them, it is force. It is a forceful way of doing it. And so when Claire walked out in season 2, she grabbed that orange and she took, I think, her dignity with her. Not only dignity, but to say to the king, this is where you would bleep this out. It'd be F you. You can't take anything. You. I may have done that, but you didn't take anything from me. Because I saved my husband. And I think this is that moment as well, is that she takes that orange and she's like, Lionel, you took nothing from me. And I'm a better person than you are. And I'm not going to let you, bring me to your level. And I think, she says that in her monologue earlier, is that this will not defeat me. And I think that's when she takes that orange back. She says, this will not defeat me. This moment, we were talking about it and we were having a conversation. One of our star executives, Karen Bailey, said, Marcelly should kill him. And we jumped all over that because this really finishes Marcelly's arc. And it was a great idea. And so Tony and I, we crafted it to where Claire does take an oath, and he is technically their patient at this moment. So Claire won't kill a patient. She will do no harm for a patient. And Marcelly's not taking that oath. And this guy basically threatened her. So it felt right. It really did. And I don't, we obviously didn't have a lot of room for the bugs this season. And Marcelly, the character, just really, jumped off the screen. Lauren, who plays Marcelly, brought so much to the character that it felt right to do it this way. And then the following scene as well, to see the effects. It's not always just the doing, but it's the effects. And I think that's really important about this episode as well, is that you can have, we did the rape, yes, but a lot of times when you see rape on television or in movies, it's how society looks at the rape victim or the rapist and what happens. And I think for us, it's really important to see how the rape victim and the family come together and how it affects all of them and everyone. because as the viewers and you guys listening to this podcast know, quite a few of our characters have gone through traumas that they can have empathy and sympathy and understand because they've been there. We filmed these scenes much earlier in the season because we knew we were going to do this, so we this particular set wasn't going to be around all season, so we had to go in and essentially wrap it out, and we needed the set for this. You can't fake this, so Sam filmed this early. We gave him the pages, and we filmed that part of him riding in early, and then we filmed this with the actual block of 11 and 12. So we kind of seamlessly put it together. That was not really Ned in that bag. Although we try to be authentic, that was a dummy. When this we did the scene with the intentions, this villain, you might just see him in season 6. So we wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for that. That's another thing that happens between the book and the series is the timelines aren't exactly the same. So sometimes we get questions on why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that, and some of the scenes just don't fit the television timeline. So it doesn't mean that scene will never get played. We have been known to do flashbacks, side backs, and side tracks, and forwards and backwards. It's kind of like Willy Wonka's elevator. We can go a lot of places, and we almost never say never. So this did a little callback to what happens to Roger when he first tries to go through. In reality, Roger got spit back out, and he thinks he sees his dad. So we were saying, oh well, it did happen in the books where they get spit back out, and they don't go to the place they want to go, even though they were both thinking of home, and this is where the stones brought them. Once again, this is something that we're teeing up for season 6. I'll let you guys figure out what that is. We had scripted this as the last scene, the ordinary day, that they seem to the Frasers don't seem to get enough of. Those moments of just blissful peace. Not on the television show. We only have 12 episodes. So in this moment, in the script, it was supposed to play as the last moment, and then of course, the iconic line that Jamie says in this scene was supposed to be the last line of the season, just like it's the last line in the book. But when we saw the scene that comes after this, it was just so powerful that we flipped it in the cut, and we moved that to the end. And something else you may or may not have noticed is that we didn't do main titles, and this would be the only episode we didn't do that. And there's no title card. What we did is we moved the main titles to the end, all the way to the end, over black. We asked Rhea to sing an a cappella of the Skyboat song and make it haunting. We wanted it to be powerfully haunting and to tie in with the rain and the thunder, knowing that this was the end of the season. The storm, it signifies here's everybody having a great time, not great time, but they're having an ordinary day and the kids are playing and the dog's running around. But for the Frasers, the storm's always coming, and that's the revolution. And then once again, this scene, which in the first cut was in a different, it was in the scripted place, which was just before the moment on the porch, and this was just so powerful. And we find the line about she feels safe. We felt this was the perfect way to end not only the episode but the season. And it's not just Claire that feels safe. I think they both, in the way they're entwined, they're as one. This is like a unit. And when we were toning this particular scene, that's what we talked about. We talked about that they are this one entity, with two names, Jamie and Claire, but it's one thing. And toning that with the director, and with Katrina and Sam, we talked about it being one, bonded and so connected you couldn't tell one from the other. And I think they established that perfectly. So as you can see here, these are the main titles, and we do them backwards. So instead of the forward, where the last thing you see would have been directed by, it came first, and then we roll, and then you see the title Outlander. But I think the this was when we heard this and watched this for the first time in this form. This was so moving to all of us, and we just sat there and listened in dead quiet. And when it was over, we all kind of let out a collective breath. I want to say thank you to everybody whose name is on these credits, and everybody's whose name isn't on these credits, who helped us and helped make this season what it is. And my personal opinion is, I think it's a fantastic episode or season and episode. I think it was very tough. It was a difficult book to do because of how big it is, and knowing we only had 12 episodes. So my hat goes off to everybody whose name is being shown on the credits, and like I said, everybody who's helped us out, whose name isn't on the credits. And a big thank you also to the people who keep us going season after season. Thank you to our fans. Our new fans, our old fans, or everybody coming on board. Lots of new watchers, but lots of people have been there from day one. So thank you so much for all your support, all your well wishes. It means a lot to all of us. And we are working on season 6. We will be ready to go when we get the go ahead, where everybody, where we can start filming in a safe and healthy manner where everybody can be safe. So until you hear me say, welcome to episode 601, I wish everybody all the health and happiness in these difficult times. So be safe out there, and thank you.